The way that you hit your drums determines the way you ought to tune them. And that's pretty much it. That's what we're talking about today. So no secrets involved, it's that simple. So if you're interested in making your drums sound better, I hope you'll watch the rest of the video and join me. We'll elaborate a little bit more on this and I'll give you some playing examples. Hey everybody, welcome to the Non-Glamorous Drummer. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Today's video is really extremely simple. We're just talking about the correlation between the volume you play and how high or low you should tune your drums as a result. If you've struggled with landing on a tuning that really works for you, this really could be the case. Not only should you tune for the room, but you should tune based on how softly or how hard you're hitting, and this is especially true with the toms, which is our focus today. We're going to talk less about the snare and the kick and more about how we can have our toms tuned based on the room and based on how we're hitting them. So first off, to kick things off, I've got my toms tuned about as low as these will go and still sound decent. So I'm gonna play a little bit on them. I'm gonna play quietly and then I'm gonna play loudly, and we'll talk a little about that. So of course everybody's entitled to their opinion, and this is a little bit subjective territory. You might like the sound of these playing quietly, you might like the sound of these playing loud. But the point I want to get at here is if you're tuning your drums really low, they lose a lot of tone. And so you might be able to make that work. But generally when you're playing lightly, a low tuning doesn't sound so good because you really have to hit those drums harder to pull the tone out of them. We're going to circle back around to that when we tune the drums up. What's interesting to me is that a lot of times the way we tune our drums really corresponds to genre. If we're playing rock, we're kind of thinking about tuning lower. If we're playing jazz, we're thinking about tuning higher. Rock drumming is usually heavier playing and a lower tuning. Jazz drumming is a lighter playing generally and a higher tuning. And room size has an effect also. A lot of times a higher tuning sounds better in a small room and a lower tuning can work in a large room where the drums are mic'd. And so it's also kind of interesting that traditionally rock drumming generally happens in bigger rooms. All the big rock bands are playing in big rooms, and so you can tune your drums low and you can hit hard. Whereas jazz traditionally has happened in smaller spaces, and a lot of times way back in the day, the drums weren't close mic'd anyways, and so they were tuned much higher. And really that's because when you're in a small room and you don't have close mics on the drums, you've got to have good tone coming from your drums that carries across to your audience. And that tone needs to be heard even when you're playing lightly, and tuning higher is what does that. Whereas if you're tuned low, you've got to hit a lot harder to pull the tone out, and even that tone and that growl may only be heard right here by you, the drummer, and it might not make it to your audience unless you've got close mics picking that up and an engineer really working with you on that. So now I'm going to tune everything up. We're going to go polar opposite, and we're especially going to listen to the toms, though I'll also tune the snare up, and we'll play quietly, we'll play loudly, and we'll see how that compares. And so I think what's happening too when you hit high tuned drums really hard is that the stick is making so much contact, it's spending more time on the head than if you're playing lightly. And because it's spending more time on the head, it's actually killing a little bit of that potential tone. And so my theory is that when you're playing really hard on high tuned drums, you're actually killing a little bit of the tone. And so you really end up at the same issue. If you've got high tuned drums playing hard, it's really the same problem as low tuned drums playing lightly. So now I'm going to tune things back to kind of the moderate tuning I use, because a lot of times we have to play rock in small rooms and we have to make sure our drums have decent tone even in a small space, and we don't necessarily want to tune super low. We want to have a little bit of that thunder, but the tone's got to be there. And so I'm going to tune my drums back to the medium tuning that's kind of my default. Hey, I really hope this video helped you out and helped get you going in the right direction as far as tuning your drums for the room and for what kind of music you're playing and for your playing volume. If this did help you out and you're new to the channel, I really hope you'll subscribe and I hope you'll share the video. Thanks so much guys for watching, and I will see you next time.